Hey everybody, it's Brandon, and in this video today we're going to change things up just a little bit as I wanted to take some time to talk about perhaps my one of my absolute most favorite pieces of music technology that I own, and also as something that I would consider one of the single best investments that a musician can make in terms of a financial investment and a musical investment. We're going to talk about my in-ear monitors rig. At the time of me recording this video, there are two projects that I primarily use my in-ear monitor rig for. That would be my original music project. We haven't leaned too much into this yet, but it is still a staple of what we do in that project. And as we kind of still are developing ideas, this is helpful for us hearing things maybe in a live mix of sorts. And then the other project, which really spurred me into looking into in-ear monitors and building this system myself, is my Royal Blood tribute, Little Monster. You should totally check out Little Monster because we have social media and we're probably gonna book shows soon. And with Little Monster really being the catalyst for me taking the plunge into learning all about in-ear monitors and setting this rig up, the conversation really kind of just got started with what sorts of technology bits, if at all, would we need to be the best tribute band project to Royal Blood that we could possibly be. And lo and behold, going to an in-ear monitor rig was the number one thing on our list that we decided on. Seeing as how for me and my bandmates in Little Monster, this rig has seen, well, really the most stage time in Little Monster, this has just been absolutely game-changing for us, and I don't think I could imagine a world where this wasn't accompanying us on stage. This video is essentially going to be split into three separate parts, where one, we are going to take a look at everything that is physically on my in-ear monitor rig, obviously why it's there, what it does, brief overview of that. Second to that, we're going to take a look at the actual mixing interface on my computer screen of, in particular, how Little Monster, we set our in-ear monitor rig, and how we are able to pull that up on the fly when we get ready to do shows, and also just because we use it in all of our regular practices. And then third and finally, we're going to go over my personal philosophy of why I love using this sort of system so much, as well as just if you're interested in getting started with in-ear monitors, I do want to share some things that I've also encountered just in the field, not only just our regular practices, but also taking this out to shows, things that we've noticed and observed that are quality of life things that any musician could use to run your in-ear monitor system very efficiently. But before we dive deeper into each part of the videos I just outlined, I need to throw a massive disclaimer and a massive giving credit where credit is due, specifically for this video, because, well, I wasn't able to build this rig on my own, and I had a great resource to pull from in order to do that. It really doesn't matter inherently what instrument you play. If you're a musician that is interested in learning more about in-ear monitor technology, how to set these up, some of the other market options that you have for parts that you can assemble these with, I highly recommend you check out the YouTube videos of Scott Uhl. Scott is another YouTuber here in the Denver music scene who mainly his videos focus on all sorts of different music technology, how to use it, reviews of other items and such, but he has done countless videos on things to do and troubleshooting tips and the like for in-ear monitor systems. I can't recommend enough that you go check his videos out. He will give you the most detailed, comprehensive guides out there that you could possibly have to getting started with this technology. Scott is also involved with many different cool music projects here in the Denver music scene, to which I am pretty confident to say that he is using an in-ear monitor rig for every single one of those. If I'm wrong, Scott, please correct me. But again, Scott's videos have been an invaluable resource, not just for me getting started with in-ear monitors, not just for Denver musicians getting started with in-ear monitors. He has a very good reach, and he has helped numerous people outside of our music scene as well with just his videos and how to get these sort of things running. All right, to get started with everything that is physically on my in-ear monitor system, I figured the best way to do this is just kind of start from front to back. And in this case, we're going to go from bottom to top just with all the gear that's on here. And where needed, I'll include some additional pictures and video on screen as well, just of specific pieces of equipment and what's going on there. So starting way down here at the bottom, this is what's called the split snake. So if you're a band that's interested in using in-ear monitors, all of your inputs are first going to patch into the split snake. That would be all your vocals, additional instruments, specifically in the case of guitar and bass, that'd likely be either you mic your guitar amp up first and then you plug into your split snake, or you're like me and you just use a headrush pedal board and you just run the XLR out of that into the split snake. Same thing with bass guitar, you're either micing an amp up into the splocks first, or you're like me, you just run out of a dark glass preamp pedal. And with the Split Snake, you have two big bundles of XLR cords that are coming out of there. You see that I've got a bunch here plugged in already just because that's all our inputs for Little Monster all sorted, and I didn't want to mess that up to make this video. But one of those two bundles of XLR cables is generally going to be shorter than the other one. You can get them in equal lengths. I personally don't see why there may be a use to do that. I could be wrong. Somebody else would probably know better on that. But the shorter bundle of cables comes into another piece of equipment, which we'll talk about shortly. But then you have your second big bundle of XLR cables, which ideally is the longer one. And that is what you plug into the front of house mixer for whoever is running the sound for any particular venue. That's what they're going to receive your inputs off of and then mix to front of house on. Seismic Audio, the company that makes my particular split sync that I've got in my system here, they do make a number of different kind of models for varying amounts of inputs, as well as lengths of your big bundles of XLR cords. And in my particular situation, my short end of the snake is only 5 feet, which is great. Doesn't need to go really all that far to get to where we need to plug in and be able to get our inner system going. And then the long side of the snake in my system is 30 feet. I would typically advise on the side of getting a longer split snake in terms of what you're gonna send to front of house, just because different venues, different layouts, you don't know how far away the front of house mixer might be, and having a longer split snake, 30 feet will do you just fine in pretty much all instances I've found. But having that long split snake will make sure you're covered to reach the front of house mixer without having to put your actual mixing console in a weird spot on stage. First show that I ever played with this whole setup here, was a bowling alley. And it turned out having the 30-foot split snake was a great idea because we had the mixer in a comfortable spot where I could reach it and interact with it for the shows that we were running that day. And it also helped with keeping things on stage as we wanted it. The next piece of equipment on my setup as well, this is just simply a mountable power strip of sorts. Once you're plugged in on stage, this is of course typically what's powering everything that's on your mixer aside from the split snake. In my particular music dealings, I'm also powering my laptop because my original music project, we are using backing tracks the entire time for all of what we do. In the case of Little Monster, as our Royal Blood tribute, typically we are just running a couple backing tracks off the laptop, but of course we want to make sure that it's powered and ready to go nonetheless. Additionally, with this mounted power strip, it's also nice to have it because your bandmates might want to plug their phones in during the show and be able just to get a charge during the set while they're not looking at their phone. That's definitely nice to have because your bandmates will thank you if they're able to charge their phones up during your set. Now we come to perhaps the most important piece of gear that's on here. This is the digital mixer. This is where you return the small side of your split snake in order to receive all of your inputs to where that's going to be feeding directly into your ears. The particular mixer that I've chosen for my setup here is the Soundcraft UI24R, because of course there are different digital mixer types that can suit your needs for depending on how many members that you have in the band or how many in-ears in particular that you may need to be running. Personally, at the moment, I'm in the philosophy of the more the merrier in terms of inputs and in-ear outputs. I would have all of our corresponding inputs for Little Monster plugged into the front of the split snake here, and then everything that's plugged in on top here is particularly these red cords here. That's everything that matches from the split snake going into the digital mixer. I also have 2/4 inch and 2 XLRs out. In theory, I could run this into, say, a couple PA speakers. The next row of XLR outputs that are on top of this particular mixer are for, well, all of the inner monitors that your band members are connecting with. So in my projects, because I'm either playing guitar or bass, I usually like to run a wireless in-ear system. Sometimes I will have an extra XLR that I stick out in front for additional length. I have found usually though I am pretty good as long as this is facing me or my backside in particular when we're on stage. I can just plug in, ow, I just scratched myself. But I can plug in my in-ear wireless system into the top row of the mixer there, and then that's where I get my in-ear feed from. That's going to be for each individual member in your band. So in the case of Little Monster, we have 3 people. We just line our XLRs up for our in-ears, 1, 2, 3. In the case of our super awesome drummer, Jeremy, he runs on just simply a wired XLR output, so he has this, which is a little headphone amplifier, which I hand off to him as we're getting set up for shows and practice. He's able to turn this on, and that feeds his in-ear feed directly into his ears. And then I just plug the other end of the wire into his output so that he gets his mix. On the far side over here, it should be noted as well that there are some USB inputs as well. There's an input if you want to plug in, say, a flash drive that has some tracks on it that you can just play right off of there. You can stick another flash drive into the slot right below it in order to record your set. If you've seen some of the videos I've uploaded to YouTube previously of Little Monster doing our thing out live, we use that to record. We didn't get the drums, unfortunately, but we did get the vocals and guitar faux guitar and bass that we were able to mix in and produce videos with. And then of course at the very top of the mixer, as I mentioned, is my laptop. That's typically where I like to run my backing tracks from. There's always the possibility that you may not be able to do that, so as Scott and in turn I would advise, always have a backup for if you are going to run backing tracks. Have a good solid backup in case your main means of running your backing tracks goes down for some reason. All right, let's see here. This is gonna be a little interesting to try and turn this around, but we'll take a look now what's on the back side of my mixer. I should have mentioned at the start of this section of the video, but hey, here we are, that everything that you see mounted on the mixer here is on a cart of sorts. This has little panels that come off that you can close everything up with and protect it with. But it's also on wheels, which is great for load-ins. All right, we'll definitely get some close-up action in here just so we can get a better look here. I know that's not the best view on the main camera. Cords that you can kind of see dangling here, these are just the unused XLRs from what's plugged into the front side of the box. And then, of course, we've got the big long snake here hanging off the side. Again, mine's 30 feet. Works pretty well for getting to any front of house mixer. Of course, and in case for some reason that the power strip cord can't reach a power outlet for whatever reason, always nice to have an extension cord for that. This is tucked away a little bit on this side of the box, so you can't see it again on the main camera. I will put a close-up here. I do have a Wi-Fi router that is mounted on the inside of this box as well. Most digital mixers that you can buy nowadays for in-ear monitor systems do have Wi-Fi units installed on them that can connect to Wi-Fi or generate its own Wi-Fi connection. However, and as Scott and me now will readily tell you, it's generally not maybe the best idea to run your digital mixer through its own built-in Wi-Fi. So having an external Wi-Fi router dedicated for that purpose is always good, so you can always maintain a good signal there. That signal more specifically being for, say, you and your bandmates who are trying to connect in with your phone or computer or tablet so that you can set your in-ear mixes accordingly. I have this on hand with this mixing console for every single band that I'm a part of, but again, we'll cover more about how I use that tips and tricks wise. The box that I bought for this mixer came with two little accessory bags, if you will. One of which I use for just some spare cords, spare 3.5 millimeters RCA, if I need to connect anything there. I've got a spare 3.5 millimeter to stereo TRS, and then the second bag that I have for this, I have some XLR to 1/4 inch adapters of both varieties. While a lot of split snakes and digital mixers do have combo XLR 1/4 inch inputs, it's always good to have these adapters just in case you encounter something really screwy or something you maybe didn't account for at first. And then as well for the wired in-ear input that I will typically pass off to the drummer, always good to have extra batteries. This is just a little Behringer model that runs on AAAs, so I always have some extra AAA batteries just in case this dies for whatever reason. Because it's certainly not fun when your drummer cannot hear the click track and it's because your headphone amplifier is dead. I will say that this maybe is a bit disorderly back here because I am in the midst of kind of reorganizing this a little bit ahead of some shows that we're looking to do for Little Monster. But that is all to say that everything that is physically in the cart for in-ear mixing all has a purpose and it's all there for a reason. Now that I've shown you everything that's physically on the front side and the back side of my in-ear mixer rig cart, let's take a look at how that works on the computer side of things with how we actually achieve our mixes. All right, everybody, here we are taking a look at how I go about whether if I need to do this through my computer, which I most often am going to do since we run our backing tracks mostly from there, or if I need to hop on my phone and do this, I can easily do it there as well. Hell, if I needed to, I could get on my iPod because I usually don't use my iPod on Wi-Fi, and I could do this as well. Now, this is going to vary based on what sort of digital mixer model you end up buying. A lot of the Behringer digital mixers, which are really popular, have their own individual apps for each individual model of mixer, which is cool. And then, of course, you get all your bandmates to download the same app, and then they can get in and configure their in-ear mixes as needed. However, in my case, with the Soundcraft UI mixer, this particular mixer does not have like a downloadable app. So instead what you do, of course I'm not going to show this on screen, but instead you turn the mixer on, make sure it's getting power, and then it starts transmitting a Wi-Fi signal, as I mentioned, with the Wi-Fi router I've got attached to the cart. And then you navigate to a particular IP address, you input a password that you set for your own mixer, and then you're met with this screen. So say for my bandmates in Little Monster, they're going to go in, they're going to connect specifically to this Wi-Fi connection that the mixer starts generating, and then once they punch in the same IP address that I have for this mixer, they'll go ahead and select the phone option. Again, I'm on my computer right now with this mixer up, so we're going to click on the big one for the tablet, but again, works same for computer. Okay, here we go. So as I mentioned, it kind of automatically dumps you off in my case to the mix channel. This is as if you were going to run a mix to like PA speakers. Really not the point of this video, but again, a cool possibility that you do have with at least this particular model mixer. Many other mixers might be able to do that as well, which is always a good thing to keep in mind. Now you see there's a number of different things on my screen here.
or at least icons to click on. The important one that we want to focus on for this video is the aux sends. You'll remember that my particular digital mixer has 8 auxiliary outputs along the top of the mixer, and they're labeled as such. And again, that's where my bandmates would go ahead and plug in their in-ear monitor units, whatever that may be, and that corresponds to the same 8 auxiliary outs that are again on the face of the mixer. And so thankfully I can go through and label these as such, and again, in Little Monster there's only 3 of us, so again, we have on in-ear 1, that's Kyle, our vocalist. So he's got his own mix set up here after we toyed around with it plenty of times in practice and shows. Got mine on 2, and then Jeremy, our drummer, is on 3. Now, if I click on slot 2 here, just if I wanted to adjust my own in-ear mix, here's what we come to on the large side of the screen. You'll see here at the bottom, there are all these different labels down here, and that corresponds to the same inputs that we are plugging in on our split snake, that again, we plug back into the digital mixer, and the other side goes to front of house. Unless specifically you mislabel something or tell your front of house person that this input doesn't actually correspond with something else, everything should match up. So running through our inputs again for Little Monster, our first one is our backing track. This is the side that we actually do hear the click track on. And then again, you can label these as specifically as you want. Again, we've got Kyle's lead vocal, my backing vocal, my faux guitar, if you will, again. We got our bass here. And then sometimes we run an E-drum set in practice. That's why we have that there. We just plug the E-drum set into this. Varies if we use that or not. Again, you might see in this particular clip here, I've got an acoustic drum set right behind me now. And you may be looking at this and say, geez, Brandon, you have some of these inputs turned up really high in your ears. Yes, while it does look like that, I would point you over to the right-hand side of the screen here, where again, I've got a master volume for my in-ear mix as it exists in this mixing console. So I can set that however I like. That's also to mention, you may look at getting one of these like little portable in-ear wireless monitor systems for yourself. The one thing I would caution you with that is, yes, these are inherently great things on their own. However, this is just effectively still a master volume for your in-ear mix. But with the power of using a digital mixer, you can adjust what you hear in your ears. You can run these in-ear units on their own. However, you are always going to be at the mercy of your front of house to either, one, put this in a spot that your wireless transmitter and receiver can effectively talk to each other, and 2, you'll still be dependent on talking to front of house in front of everybody to say, hey, can I get more of this in my ear? Can I bring the bass down? A little more guitar, vocal. And that brings up the concern of if you and the other 4 or 5 people in your band are having to get in-ear mixes going by talking to front of house each individually, you might start cutting into your own set list. But thankfully, with pretty much every digital mixer model that exists nowadays, you'll be able to save your entire band's mix and then load it up on the fly as you're getting ready for a show. Right now, mine even just currently defaults to the Little Monster mix because that's all I've been using lately. And again, we just get all our in-ear inputs plugged in and we just start playing and performing. And the other cool thing with being able to save your band mixes on the fly, especially in my case, I just have a specific menu I get into where, in theory, if I had other bands I was working with, I could just click, boom, it loads that mix, and then I'm working with that particular band. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the final part of this video.
So as mentioned before, going into some final tips and tricks that I have personally found useful for using an in-ear monitor system, I do want to offer you this. Because surprisingly enough, or perhaps not so surprisingly enough, I have seen many discussion on, say, social media and the like about the use of in-ear monitors, and maybe one of the best ways that it can be boiled down to is, it's as if you would argue politics on social media and the conversation ends up going nowhere like it always would. But alas, and as I've already gone on long enough yapping about why I love using an in-ear monitor system and the work I put in to make one that I really like to use, I am a firm believer that all forms of music technology are inherently a good thing in terms of inspiring people to get their creative juices flowing. That being said, and in my subjective view, an in-ear monitor system is simply one of the best investments that you could ever make in a music context, just maybe for yourself if you're playing out live solo, or if you're playing in full bands. It's simply just one of the best pieces of music technology that I have chosen to invest time, money, and energy into. And since I've got down the IEM rabbit hole deep enough now, I would never consider gigging without one of these, be it my own rig that I've set up here, or if, say, I join into another project that already has one going. To me, using an in-ear monitor system affords you a great deal of peace of mind in terms of, one, protecting your hearing. You would know I'm a big stickler on that, since I have my headphones on like 90% of the time anyway. Using an in-ears rig with the ability to consistently control the variable of what you're being able to hear in relation to you and your bandmates playing live can't be beat in my mind. And that is going to be the hill that I staunchly stand on when the time comes inevitably that I won't ever be able to play out live anymore, whatever that may be. But if you do want to take the plunge on getting into in-ear monitors and figuring out something for yourself, whether you're playing solo again or in a full band setting, here's all what I would offer you as good tips to keep in mind. 1. Simplify your inputs. When I first started doing this, I was doing something a little weird where I had like a range of inputs that was like, I don't know, 1 through 5 was vocals, 6 through 9 was guitars. That kind of seems like maybe a good idea, but it really doesn't work well in practice when you're trying to fumble through XLRs to hand off to whoever's running sound for front of house for them to get all the inputs plugged in. So, just easy as that. 1 through 5, that's everything that we use for Little Monster. On top of keeping your input simple, you may recall that I had this little folder earlier. And in this folder, I have my own little packet which has our stage plot, a more detailed list of inputs, and then also, if I need to just pass this off quickly to front of house, I can say, here's the long side of our XLR split snake, here's all the inputs that we're going to be running off of. And thankfully, I never have a problem with the front of house sound person taking this off my hands to go up to the booth and start their front of house mix with, because I keep copies of this in the folder. 1 for front of house, 1 for the rest of the band. Doing it this way with just inputs 1 through 5 and then having this packet on hand has saved a huge amount of time when I've handed this off to front of house. Granted, my sample size of doing this is a little limited, but nonetheless, every single sound person that I've done this with has greatly appreciated it. Something you can also consider in terms of simplifying your inputs is, do you even need to mic the drums? Now again, that might vary based on your venue situation and maybe how consistently you are out gigging with your band. And considering in my home studio, I am test piloting an acoustic drum kit for the first time, I've never really had the need to actually mic drums up. My personal observation with that is simply acoustic drums are very loud, and then when you start getting that in the front of house mixer, I don't generally find it's too terribly hard to keep track of the drummer as they're playing. Because once front of house says, okay, go ahead and play the full kit, yeah, you'll definitely hear it most of the time. And especially as the musician on stage, you're going to be right up next to it. Number 2. Educate your bandmates on how to use the gear. A good chunk of the time with my projects, I usually am adjusting the mixes as people ask. Because these digital mixers anymore typically use like a smartphone application, or in my case, as we demonstrated earlier, where you just log it into a console on your web browser. Now again, this will vary based on your individual needs, but you don't necessarily maybe have to give your bandmates a full, complete rundown of every single feature that's in the actual in-ear monitor mixing interface. A good chunk of the time, they just might want to know, hey, how do I adjust my in-ear mix on the fly if I need to do so? And you can just take them right to where those in-ear mixes are and all labeled out so they can tap on their mix and adjust accordingly. And certainly if anyone needs a refresher on what they need to do if they want to control their own mix on the fly, certainly take the time to give them that. They will thank you and it will make everyone's life a lot easier. Number 3, don't rush into it, but take the time to research different pieces of in-ear monitor system gear that may be helpful for you and your band needs, while also weighing that against the price point of each individual piece of gear that you'll need. I'll admit, I went on the heftier side of pricing in terms of what I wanted to put in my in-ear system. And largely because pretty much everything that's in my studio space here at home is meant to be modular and can be rearranged in different ways as needed. That's exactly what I went for when building my in-ear monitor system. And lastly, number 4, think about what using an in-ear monitor system will mean for you as a musician. Kind of tying back to the whole, I like being able to hear myself in relation to the band mix through this, I find that using an in-ear system has made me a significantly better backup vocalist. Backing vocals were something that I always knew that I wanted to take a step towards and improve on, and using an in-ear monitor system has given me so much power and agency in being able to do that in a consistent fashion. And so that's everything for this video, a complete rig rundown of my in-ear monitor system. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and certainly if you have any thoughts or comments on this video, I would certainly love to hear them down in the comments. That is to also say, if you have any questions, I will try to answer them where I can. If you are considering taking the dive on getting into in-ear monitor systems yourself for really any purpose, definitely check out the videos of Scott Uhl again here on YouTube. And he does far more broad overviews of different sorts of equipment that you could consider using. Other than that, I am definitely looking forward to taking this out live again for the first time in a while. And whenever that comes up, you'll definitely see video announcements about that here on the channel. But other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day otherwise, and I will see you in the next video.